Now let me check my own air screen and can I? Okay. All right, so now we're inside of the legal ID, and I will queue y'all up, and then I'll come back to y'all.
Sounds good. How long we got?
30 minutes.
No, how long we got before we queued up?
About 1 minute.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just thinking that it used to be that you'd have the news guy. Was that a service that you subscribed to?
Yeah, the news is playing now. The national news. We used to have local news too, but the guy that's doing the local news, he's no longer doing it.
Okay.
All right, so we're still inside the news. Then we've got the all right, so we're getting ready to go into the legal ID. And then I'll start you off and hand it off, and I'll see y'all in 30 minutes.
Thank you, Oganzi.
All right, stand by 30 seconds. KLK 102.5 FM. Good morning to you on your Tuesday. It's February 28th, 2023, and it is also the heavenly birthday of our departed Queen, Quabila Jones. So definitely keep her and her family lifted up in prayer. She will never be forgotten. This is our conservative corner edition of Community Conversations. As always, we have Mrs. Ira Stevens and Mr. Hard Weinstock representing the Northeast Arkansas Tea Party, and they are going to let you know what the latest updates are. So take it away.
Hey, everybody. It's a beautiful day out there, and I'm glad I'm going to be able to be out in it. I hope everybody else can. Today, we're going to talk about the ordinance, the latest ordinance that the Jonesboro City Council is attempting to pass. I think it's been on its second reading. Ardell, is that correct?
Yeah, the third reading will be the council meeting next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. We think this is important, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, and then we're going to let you know that probably our next meeting, we will, on KLEK, we will talk a lot about the legislative session and certain bills that have passed, certain bills that have not passed, why they've passed, why they haven't passed, the ones that we as conservatives like, the ones that we as conservatives are disappointed in. So we'll do that, because this has been a very interesting legislative session. Been a lot going on behind the scenes, especially. But today we're going to talk about this ordinance. And Hardell, I guess, is the one, Hardell and another person are the ones who informed me first about this ordinance, and I did research on it. And Hardell, what was it about this ordinance that bothered you?
Well, initially, what caught my eye was that it had an emergency clause in it. And if you recall, that was what kind of spun us up to ask the one over the world question of what's the emergency? And then in reading the bill, in reading the ordinance, it just became clear that this was a much bigger issue than what was being presented in the ordinance. And as you know, I'm a dog on a bone regarding this Jonesboro Sports Complex and Convention Center issue, and reading this ordinance 23-005, I went to that particular project and filled in some blanks and made you and some others aware of what I was seeing. And then you were able to take what I was seeing and take it to the next level as far as not just this one project, but potentially every project, not just in Jonesboro, potentially across Arkansas. And that's where we've been. We did the first reading of the ordinance, and Miss Patty Lack asked some very good questions during that. They had an Arkansas Municipal League attorney there who was supposed to come back for the second reading or provide some answers to the council and the city and us residents. At the second reading, that didn't happen, and there was no other discussion about it. So that in turn, I've sent an email to the council, to the mayor's communications representative, Bill Campbell, asking some questions. And in the same time frame, you've revealed some other concerns. So,
But they did remove the emergency clause, didn't they?
yes, ma'am. Yeah, they did remove the emergency clause, and that's, I guess, to their credit. So that's kind of the history of it as far as how we got to where we are. And, you know, the clock's ticking, and we think there's still issues to be addressed. And we'd encourage each listener and every resident to contact their city council representative and make sure they understand what's going on with ordinance 23.
Well, I think we better get busy and tell them what's going on with it. This is an ordinance that originally it's actually an update of two previous ordinances that happened way back in 1975 or 78, and then also 1980. In 1975, it was to help residential housing because the interest rates were so high. I bought my house in 84, and the interest rate at that time, I got a 9% and was absolutely thrilled because everything we were looking at that time was 14, 15, 16%. And if you look at your house payment now and you're paying, you know, less than 6% on it, probably you would have been paying double the house payment, if not triple, on the same house you have based on the rates that there were in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. So they did this to help housing cost, you know, to give low cost loans to people. And then the second one was to enlarge St. Bernard, or to help them enlarge to provide funding for this. So this is primarily a funding mechanism, this ordinance, but the scope and the breadth of power that this ordinance has is absolutely overwhelming. Now, granted, it's not Jonesboro's fault, because this, what allows them to do this is from an Act 142, where they go back and to the state level, and they passed this, and then in 2020 updated it. And the powers in this act that apply to everybody in the state, every municipality in the state, are absolutely astounding. And it shows from when I've researched this act, that is also a large, you know, an old act, and I researched 2020 or 2010 or 20, yes, I think it's 2010 version of this act. It shows the growth of government then to go down to 2020, the version that we have this act. And if you're listening on here, it's going to be, could be hard to keep up with, because I'll be talking about the ordinance and then I'll be referring to the act, because the ordinance is basically constructed from the act. And the ordinance gives all the powers. As a matter of fact, it says the city finds it's in its best interest of its citizens to amend, and that's Jonesboro, to amend and modify ordinance 1657 and 1717. Those were the two previous ones I mentioned, to empower the board with the full scope of authority permitted by the act. And the full scope of authority is just breathtaking. I've talked to lawyers, one a constitutional lawyer, and he was extremely surprised and upset by the powers granted in this act. So what we're concerned about is, and we think people ought to contact the board and tell them, you know, for one thing, there's not a lot of there's very little oversight mentioned in the actual ordinance in Jonesboro, even though they refer back to the act where the act says that the board can place specific limitations on the exercise of the powers granted, including limitations on the powers of the board's area of operations, the use of public facilities projects of the board, and the board's authority to issue bonds. And it also talks about, that individual members can be expelled, taken off based on whether they commit malfeasance or misfeasance. That's a little bit concerning. And this actually should take 2 programs to discuss because it's complex. But the board hasn't put that in this ordinance, and it really should be. There should be specific oversight in this ordinance where you don't have to go back to the act. That's the opinion that I got. Okay.
Well, to your point, that specifically was brought up
Yes.
not only by Patty Lack at the first reading, but it is notable that the city ordinance invokes all the authorities of the act, but very few, if any, restrictions included in the act. And
Right.
I think your point's exactly right, where given the experiences we've had over the last, since 2020, with the council, that's all the more concerning. So just wanted to emphasize.
Okay, you're right about that. And I think I need to back up and tell everybody, this whole thing boils down to the council has appointed a public facilities board. They've already appointed the people who would be on that board, and it's up for them then to pass this ordinance that then would incorporate that board that will oversee every public facility in the city of Jonesboro, as well as the surrounding counties, because it says it's in the best interest of the citizens of the city to empower the board. That would be this new facilities. And it's not really a new board, but this updated facilities board to support and facilitate the accomplishment of public facilities projects within or near or partly within or partly near the corporate boundaries of the city. So see, it even takes it into the county. So everybody needs to be concerned about this because of the power of this act and of this board. It really needs to be constrained. And it just really shows the growth of government and how much it gets stronger, which is, of course, that's an element of what we deal with the Tea Party, and how concerning that is, because this board is unelected and essentially unaccountable to the taxpayer. Now, granted, see, this goes off into another tangent. It's like dealing with the trees, all these branches. The funding that they're talking about is primarily municipal funding through bonds. So many people say, well, it doesn't involve tax money. Well, that's not necessarily so, but it's primarily for bonding, for funding from bonds and things for all these facilities. But let me tell you what that they've got the ability to do. And this is from the ordinance, but it also is in the act. It's the board will have authority to own, acquire, construct, means build, reconstruct, extend, equip, improve, operate, maintain, sell, lease, contract concerning, or otherwise deal in or dispose of healthcare facilities, emergency medical healthcare facilities, residential housing facilities, off-street parking facilities, recreational and tourist facilities, waterworks facilities, sewer facilities, and here we're talking about city water and light, facilities for securing or developing industry, energy facilities, hydroelectric power projects, education facilities, other capital improvement facilities, or any combination of such facilities or any interest in such facilities, including without limitation, leasehold interests in and mortgages on such facilities, each as defined in the act and collectively referred to as public facilities projects within or near or partly within and partly near the city. Pretty inclusive. I mean, this is basically every public facility that we would have in Jonesboro would be essentially controlled and financed by an unelected board. This is another way of moving the taxpayer back from any kind of ability to direct our own the city resources that we essentially own as the taxpayers. The public facilities are owned by the public, and the government is our workers. They're our employees. So it moves the taxpayer residents back from being able to control any of this, because the board doesn't owe any really accountability then once they've been appointed and once they are on their road to doing these things. According to what we've read in this ordinance and in the act, they're basically on their own. It's a way for the city council, it looks like, to cede their responsibility for city facilities. Ardell, what do you think?
Yes, yeah, I agree. And as you know, we got a letter published in the Jonesboro Sun. I think it was published on February the 17th, that brings forward some of the very issues that you've mentioned here, particularly the ceding of accountability and responsibility of oversight for whatever it is that the mayor, it's not really the city council, it's the mayor that's putting forward the ordinance, and he's looking for the city council to bless it. So I think the way I put it was, is Mayor Copenhaver ceding responsibility to his 80,000 constituents, and is the city council going to allow him to do that? And it comes back to what seems to be a trend in the past couple of years for the expansion of government. And when we talk expansion of government, that can mean anything from a tax increase, such as the hamburger tax increase, which we didn't vote on, or the hotel tax increase, which we didn't vote on. It has to do with grant money for trail systems, where Jonesboro's got a $45 million, 20% match of about $9 million for the Jonesboro Trail Plan. I think that might be modified some now that the mayor's pursuing this merging of trails with Craighead County, Greene County, Jonesboro, Brookland, and Paragould. That's now in the works. And maybe we wouldn't be as hard over about some of this if we were getting some kind of report accountability where they tell us, okay, this is the Jonesboro Shooting Sports Complex. This is the grant money that was received. This is the Jonesboro match. Here we go with year one. This is what we've done. Year two, this is what we've done. We were able to open around September, I think, of 2021 in a partial opening, and we were able to bring in a little bit of revenue, but based on our plan, 2022 was our first big year. We've gone gangbusters with completion of the building. We've got the maintenance shed up. We're doing these modifications, and oh, by the way, here's some more revenue that we've been bringing in. I mean, I don't know how many people know, but just this past weekend, the Association of the Arkansas National Guard had an event out there, and I saw at least one picture that was posted, and I think that's great news. But for the accountability, we don't want to see he or she looks good, or we're getting more people, or anecdotal information. We want to see how the managers that we've hired to run this shooting sports complex, the Copenhaver administration, with the Jonesboro City Council as responsible for city properties, show us some numbers, make it understandable for laymen, and maybe we would have a little bit more consideration for what we believe if they were doing the job that they were doing. But and again, it's expanding government. Everything they do for all the good things that they've done with respect to increasing the road repair, drainage, the code enforcement, which
And
is
those are necessities. And those are necessities. And what we've heard.
inherently governmental functions.
Right.
If the code enforcement, why we understand that, you know, we're very concerned about onerous government in all regards, but code enforcement is a government function. So if they've expanded that operation, we ought to see a breakout of what it's accomplished, partially because they're hiring more people. And they keep on hiring people. And we're all for people, and we're all for Jonesboro people. But at the same time, it's expanded government, and that's not what we're about. So I'll get off my horse here.
Well, I think, you know, this all boils down to what, you know, what we've been talking about, the fact that this was just very surprising. Now, this act has you know, been around a long time, but most people don't pay attention to things until we get, you know, an ordinance like this, and we see with their constant referring, because the ordinance gives itself all the power of the act, and the act is basically control of everything. I look here, they've got a section on energy facilities, and of course, you know, I don't know how many people know about it, but City Water and Light of Jonesboro is one of the best facilities, public facilities ever, anywhere, I think. As a matter of fact, if I remember correctly, they won an award, a national award, because of the way that they function. And we have lower rates than just about anybody. And that's across the country, not just in Northeast Arkansas or Arkansas. They're a great facility. It's one of those you think, and it's been run so well for so long, you want to see people keep your hands off of City Water and Light, because we don't want it. It seems like the more government touches, the more it gets messed up. Well, this act is all over, basically taking over our energy supplies and our energy facilities, which would, you know, be our City Water and Light. And it focuses on renewable resources. Well, that puts us in the same situation, if that happens, as what's happened, and they want to go completely. And we know they're already tending toward that. So that's going to raise our rates, and it will make our power less reliable. We see what happened in Texas when they did that. And we see what's happened in California, where they have, you know, major, don't tell people, don't run your utilities, don't run your air conditioner, because they don't have enough power, because renewables just don't provide that amount of power. So let's not mess up what we already have. Now, that will be subject to this ordinance, because the ordinance claims that they're assuming all powers of the act. There's another thing in here, and we will post the act and the ordinance on our Tea Party Facebook page when we get finished with this, or at least the link to both of them. This dealing with other provisions, it says here, and I'm reading directly from the act, the construction of facilities for public facilities projects by or on behalf of a public facilities board under the provisions of this chapter need not comply with the requirements of any other law applicable to the construction of public works or facilities. Really? I think anybody would understand that that's kind of a bad, that the construction of facilities do not need to comply with the requirements of any other law applicable to the construction of public works. That's questionable right there. You know, are they going to support that? Would our local facilities board support a statement like that? Well, according to this ordinance, they do. Also, none of the powers granted to a board under the provisions of this chapter shall be subject to the supervision or regulation or require the approval or consent of the state or of any municipality, county, or political subdivision of the state, or of any commission, board, body, bureau, official, or agency of the state, or any municipality, county, or political subdivision. It says none of the powers granted to the board under the provisions of this chapter in this act have any kind of oversight. Is our board, when they talk about oversight, on one hand, how do they explain this paragraph? This needs to be dealt with directly from our board.
Real quick.
Yes.
What you read although we see some short-term concerns specifically to Jonesboro, what you're actually reading expands into very long-term concerns. Because
Plus, and it expands it all over the state.
Right, well, that's right, but the point is that it may seem to some listeners, you know, that it's not a big deal right now, but the authority that this ordinance and act give could very well have great effect, you know, a decade from now, or, you know, 5 years from now, or as they determine it's wanted, as opposed to Jonesboro residents deciding that it's something that it's needed for one reason or another. So that's people who are just tuning in now, they're hearing this likely for the first time. And if nothing else, if it sounds complicated, it is, and we're not experts, we're citizens, we're residents, and we expect the Jonesboro City Council to dig into this thing and force the administration to explain the long-term implications of what he's attempting to do. And this isn't anything more than something of a demand of the mayor's office as the executive of the city. His legislature is that city council. So that city council has made requests before of the mayor to be more open with reporting on what's going on with the status of projects. The mayor's acknowledged that he was going to make an attempt to do that. And we think that as residents, if the city has a revenue producing event or a revenue producing facility, that ought to be highlighted for the residents so that we see that where our tax money is going.
And that makes it a bit, Hardell, it means not just highlighted, because some of these records are out there, but they're not easily
There you go.
accessible by most people. And that's one of the problems.
That's the point.
They're not easily accessible, and that's what needs to be done. I also want to sort of finish up because we've only got a couple of minutes left. This is just another reiteration of the facilities that this board will have supervision over, and all of the powers that I said earlier. Court facilities, jails, police and sheriff stations, apparatus and facilities, any and all facilities for the city or town halls, courthouse, administrative, executive, and other public offices, firefighting facilities and apparatus, public health facilities, hospitals, nursing homes, extended care facilities, residential housing, and low and moderate income elderly individuals with disabilities, parking facilities and garages, educational and training facilities for public employees, auditorium, stadiums and convention, meeting or entertainment facilities, ambulance and other emergency medical device facilities, medical service facilities, civil defense facilities, air and water pollution control facilities, drainage and flood control facilities and storm sewers, arts and crafts centers, museums and libraries, public parks, playgrounds, other public open spaces, marinas, swimming pools, tennis courts, golf courts, courses, camping facilities, other recreational facilities, tourist information and assistance centers, historical, cultural, natural, or folklore sites, fair and exhibition facilities, streets and street lighting, alleys, sidewalks, roads, bridges, viaducts, airports, passengers, freight terminals, barge terminals, public transportation facilities, public water systems and related transmission and distribution facilities, storage facilities, wells, reservoirs, treatment plants, et cetera, sewer collection systems and treatment plants, maintenance and storage buildings and facilities, incinerators and garbage, solid waste disposal, social and rehabilitative services facilities. That pretty much covers that this board will have authority over all of that. Now, like I said, the original meaning of the board or purpose of the board was for funding, primarily bond type funding. But this act gives that facilities board really total authoritarian oversight of the entire public facilities in any municipality, in the state of Arkansas. This needs to be closely looked at. This is an overwhelming amount of power for an unelected board, not elected representatives. So I think that's going to take us down to about, the end of what we can accomplish. We just wanted to let everybody know this is what's going on. And it is of great concern to some of us that it seems to be an overwhelming amount of power located in one small board. It's been allowed for a long time. Do we want Jonesboro to incorporate something like that that's so overwhelmingly powerful? Or do we want them to do an ordinance that restricts this amount of power?
Well,
So-
in and of itself, with just a short time left, the 2 times that the act has been invoked before were for very specific purposes, and this is Katie bar the door, because we want everything that the act authorizes, and then it just becomes how vigilant are you, Jonesboro residents, in paying attention to where the administration is taking the city? Is this really what Jonesboro wants? It's not what Jonesboro needs. Jonesboro has been referred to as the gem of the Delta because of what we are and who we are. So I'll stop there and encourage everyone to contact their city council person, citywide or ward, and let them know your concern.
All right, and we're gonna have to stop there. That's gonna do it for this edition of Conservative Corner. Actually, forgot to give a disclaimer, so I'll give it now. Kaylee Ken, the voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council. We do not endorse, support, or oppose any political candidate, party, or take any position on issue, but we always provide these for informational purposes only. We encourage you to stay informed, attend those city council meetings, contact your elected officials, let your voices be known. And of course, since today is Quabila's birthday, I challenge each and every one of you to be intentional. Happy 46th heavenly birthday to our queen. Thank you guys for joining us always for this edition of Conservative Corner. You guys have a great and blessed day. This is Kate, LEK, on 2.5 FM. All right, thank you all, and I will talk to you all later.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day, Laganzi.
You too.
Thanks, Laganzi.